A journey begins, the decision that changed everything. 18 years ago, the world was captivated by the story of two little girls, Sophia and Isabel Carter, conjoined twins whose lives were forever changed by a groundbreaking surgery. Their journey was not just a medical marvel, but a testament to resilience, love, and the extraordinary bond they shared as sisters. This is their story, as told by those who witnessed every step of their remarkable path. The weight of a life-altering choice. The Carter family's world turned upside down the moment they learned they were expecting twins. At first, Emma and Daniel Carter were ecstatic. They had always dreamed of growing their family, and the thought of welcoming two little girls filled them with indescribable joy. But that joy soon turned to fear when an ultrasound at 12 weeks revealed something unexpected. Sophia and Isabel were conjoined at the abdomen, sharing several vital organs. The doctors spoke in hushed, careful tones as they explained the complexities of the twins' condition. The girls shared a liver, a kidney, and part of their digestive system. The medical team warned Emma and Daniel that the chances of survival were slim. Even if the girls made it to birth, their future remained uncertain. Emma recalled the day she and Daniel sat in a sterile, white-walled consultation room, absorbing the weight of what they had just been told. The words of the doctor echoed in her mind. Their condition is extremely rare. If they survive birth, a separation surgery would be high risk. It's a decision that will shape their entire lives. For weeks, Emma wrestled with emotions she had never felt before: fear, doubt, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. As a mother, she wanted nothing more than to protect her daughters, but how could she make a decision that could either give them a chance at independent lives or risk losing them altogether? Despite the doctor's warnings, Emma and Daniel refused to give up. They sought out specialists across the country, consulting some of the top pediatric surgeons and medical experts. Each meeting brought a mix of hope and heartbreak. Some experts were cautiously optimistic, outlining potential surgical plans, while others advised against separation altogether, fearing the risks were too high. Even if we can separate them, one doctor had said grimly, the quality of life they will have apart is uncertain. Are you prepared for that reality? Prepared or not, the Carters knew they had to fight for their daughters. Every sleepless night, every research paper Emma pored over, every difficult conversation with specialists. They did it all because they believed in the strength of their little girls. A mother's unwavering resolve. One moment in particular solidified Emma's decision. It happened during a late-night ultrasound appointment. As she lay on the examination table, the grainy black and white image of her unborn daughters flickered on the screen. For the first time, she saw their faces up close, tiny, delicate, and full of life. Tears welled up in her eyes. In that instant, she knew she would do whatever it took to give them a chance. No matter what happens, she whispered, I will fight for you. Daniel squeezed her hand, his own expression full of unspoken emotions. The decision was made. No matter how difficult the road ahead, they would pursue the separation surgery. With unwavering determination, Emma and Daniel prepared for the journey that lay ahead. They'd moved temporarily to a city with a top-ranked children's hospital, where a team of skilled surgeons, led by Dr. Vivian Harper, agreed to take on the case. The Carters were warned that the operation would be one of the most complex ever attempted, requiring months of preparation and an extensive post-surgical recovery plan. Emma and Daniel braced themselves for the unknown. They knew the risks, but they also knew one thing for certain. If there was even a sliver of hope, they had to take it. The long road to surgery. The months leading up to the twins' birth were filled with careful monitoring and endless planning. The medical team worked tirelessly, mapping out every possible scenario and running simulation after simulation to prepare for the high-stakes surgery ahead. Finally, at 34 weeks, Emma was scheduled for a C-section. It was a tense morning in the hospital, with specialists lining the delivery room, ready for any complications that might arise. As the first cries of Sophia and Isabel filled the air, a wave of relief washed over the room. The girls had arrived, fragile but alive. From the moment they were born, they were surrounded by love and unwavering support. The first few weeks were critical, as doctors monitored their health and stability. The Carters spent every waking moment by their daughters' sides, marveling at their tiny fingers, their synchronized movements, and the way they instinctively reached for each other. But the clock was ticking. The longer they remained conjoined, the more difficult separation would become. The medical team determined that the best time for the surgery would be when the girls were 4 years old enough for their bodies to handle the procedure, but young enough for their organs to adapt to the separation. And so, the countdown began. The day that changed everything. 4 years passed in the blink of an eye. Sophia and Isabel grew into bright, curious little girls with infectious laughter and boundless energy. They were inseparable in every sense of the word, not just physically but emotionally. They played together, learned together, and even had their own secret language, a mix of words and gestures only they could understand. Their bond was undeniable, but so was the growing challenge of living as one. As they became more aware of their condition, questions began to arise. "Mama, why can't we run like the other kids?" Isabel once asked, her wide eyes searching for an answer. Emma gently brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Because you and Sophia are special," she said softly. "But soon, we're going to help you both do all the things you dream of." The day of the surgery arrived with a mix of excitement and fear. The hospital halls were hushed, tension thick in the air. Reporters gathered outside, eager for updates on the historic procedure. Inside the operating room, Dr. Harper and her team of specialists prepared for what would be the most challenging surgery of their careers. Emma and Daniel sat in a waiting room just down the hall, their hands clasped tightly. They had done everything they could. Now, all they could do was hope. "They're fighters, Emma," Daniel whispered, his voice full of quiet conviction. She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. No matter the outcome, they knew one thing. Their daughters had already defied the odds. A moment of crisis. The surgery was expected to take over 18 hours, but just a few hours in, an alarm pierced the silence of the operating room. One of the monitors began flashing red. "Sophia's heart rate is spiking." A nurse called out urgently. Dr. Harper's hands remained steady, but the tension in the room became palpable. They had anticipated complications, but this was happening sooner than expected. Every second mattered. Outside, Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't know what was happening, but she could feel it. Something wasn't right. As she clutched the small teddy bear her daughters had always shared, she whispered a silent prayer. "Please, let them be okay." The battle had begun, and it would be a long road ahead. A fight for life. The critical hours. The hospital halls were eerily silent, the usual hum of activity dulled by the weight of the moment. In the operating room, where the future of Sophia and Isabel Carter hung in delicate balance, time itself seemed to stretch and compress with every flicker of a heart monitor, every precise movement of the surgical team. Emma and Daniel Carter sat in a sterile waiting room, the air thick with tension. The hours felt endless. Emma's fingers were wrapped tightly around a small, worn-out teddy bear, one that had belonged to the twins since infancy. It had been their comfort in restless nights, their companion during doctor's visits, and now it was a symbol of everything that was at stake. Daniel sat beside her, his jaw clenched, trying to maintain the calm he knew Emma needed. But inside, his heart pounded with the same fear that gripped her. Their daughters were on that operating table, and no matter how much faith they had in the medical team, the uncertainty was suffocating. Then the waiting room door swung open. A nurse entered, her expression professional, but with a hint of urgency. "Mrs. Carter, Mr. Carter, there's been a complication. A heartbeat away from disaster." Inside the operating room, the tension had escalated rapidly. Dr. Vivian Harper, the lead surgeon, had expected challenges, but when Sophia's heart rate spiked without warning, she knew they were facing a serious problem. "She's losing stability," one of the anesthesiologists called out. A nurse adjusted the IV drip, attempting to stabilize Sophia's vitals. Isabel's readings remained steady, but as conjoined twins, their systems had been interlinked since birth. Separating them had triggered a cascade of stress on Sophia's heart. Dr. Harper took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define the success or failure of the surgery. "We need to adjust the separation strategy," she instructed. "Slow down the liver division. Let's get her heart rate back under control before proceeding." The room was a symphony of controlled chaos. Machines beeping, surgical instruments being handed over with rapid precision, a steady stream of directives from Dr. Harper. Every single person in that room understood what was at stake. Outside, Emma and Daniel listened as the nurse explained the situation in carefully chosen words. "Sophia's heart is under stress. The surgical team is adjusting the procedure to stabilize her, but this will extend the duration of the operation. Is she going to be okay?" Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. The nurse hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Emma to notice. "They're doing everything they can," she said, offering a reassuring but non-committal response. Emma felt her stomach twist. This was the nightmare she had feared since the moment she learned her daughters were conjoined. They had fought so hard to get here. She couldn't bear the thought of losing them now. A mother's prayer. As the hours dragged on, Emma and Daniel found themselves clinging to hope in different ways. Daniel paced the room, his mind racing with every possible outcome, while Emma sat frozen in place, staring at the door as if sheer willpower could make it swing open with good news. At one point, she whispered a prayer, her voice so soft that only she could hear it. "Please, God, I don't need miracles, I just need them to survive." She thought back to the past 4 years, the sleepless nights when the girls had cried out in discomfort, the countless hospital visits, the way they had instinctively reached for each other whenever one was scared. They were fighters. They had always been fighters. All she could do now was believe that their fight wasn't over. Breaking the connection. Back in the operating room, the team had successfully stabilized Sophia's vitals. The delicate process of separating the twins continued with painstaking precision. "We're almost there," Dr. Harper murmured. The final connection between the girls, the intricate network of blood vessels and tissue they had shared since birth, was the last challenge. With slow, deliberate movements, Dr. Harper and her team worked to ensure that each girl retained as much healthy tissue as possible. Then, at exactly 19 hours and 37 minutes into the procedure, it was done. Sophia and Isabel Carter were no longer conjoined. A wave of relief washed over the team, but they knew their work wasn't over yet. The next 24 hours would be critical in determining whether both girls would survive the transition to independent life. The moment of truth. When Dr. Harper finally emerged from the operating room, Emma and Daniel shot to their feet. The exhaustion in Dr. Harper's eyes was evident, but there was something else there, too. Something that made Emma's breath hitch in her throat. "The separation was successful," she said gently. Emma's legs nearly gave out. Daniel caught her just in time as her body trembled with relief. "Both girls are stable," Dr. Harper continued. "Sophia gave us a scare, but she pulled through. We'll be monitoring them closely, but for now, they're okay." Tears streamed down Emma's face as she clutched Daniel's hand. "Can we see them?" Daniel asked. "Soon," Dr. Harper promised. "They're being moved to recovery now. We'll bring you in once they're stable enough." A new kind of bond. Hours later, Emma and Daniel were led into the recovery room. For the first time in their lives, Sophia and Isabel lay in separate beds. It was an image that felt almost unnatural after years of seeing them joined together. Sophia was the first to stir. Her tiny eyelids fluttered open, and she looked around groggily. Emma rushed to her side, brushing a gentle hand over her forehead. "Hey, baby," she whispered. Sophia's lips moved, her voice barely above a breath. "Where's Isabel?" Emma's heart clenched. Even after everything, Sophia's first instinct was to seek out her sister. "She's right next to you, sweetheart. You're just in your own beds now." Sophia turned her head slightly, her gaze landing on Isabel, who was still asleep. For a long moment, she just stared. Then, slowly, a tiny, tired smile curved her lips. For the first time in their lives, they were apart. But even as they lay in separate beds, one thing was clear. The bond they shared wasn't defined by the physical connection they had lost. It was something deeper, something unbreakable. And their journey was only just beginning. A new life, a new struggle. The world had waited with bated breath, and now, after nearly 2 decades of uncertainty, Sophia and Isabel Carter were finally separated. Their parents, Emma and Daniel, had spent years preparing for this moment, but nothing could have truly readied them for the emotional whirlwind that followed. As the days passed in the hospital, the girls' bodies began the long process of healing. The physical separation had been a success, but the journey to recovery, physically, emotionally, and mentally, was only just beginning, adjusting to life apart. For as long as they could remember, Sophia and Isabel had been inseparable, not just in the literal sense, but in every moment of their existence. They had learned to walk together, eat together, sleep together. Every movement had been synchronized, every moment shared. Now, for the first time in their young lives, they had to navigate a world where they were no longer one. The first night after the surgery was the hardest. Emma sat between their hospital beds, holding both of their tiny hands, watching as they drifted in and out of restless sleep. Every time Isabel stirred, she would instinctively reach for Sophia, her small fingers searching for the familiar warmth that was no longer there. When she didn't find it, she whimpered in distress, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Mama, where's Sophia?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I'm right here," Sophia's voice, equally weak, answered from the other side of the room. But it wasn't the same. It would never be the same again. Emma swallowed the lump in her throat, forcing herself to stay strong. "You're both here, my loves. You're safe. You're together in a new way now." But the words felt hollow. No matter how much love surrounded them, this was still an unimaginable adjustment for 2 little girls who had never known a world without each other, physically connected at all times. The pain of healing. Beyond the emotional struggles, the physical healing process was grueling. Both girls had extensive incisions running along their abdomens, and each movement brought sharp pain. Bandage changes were agonizing. Their doctors warned Emma and Daniel that the healing process would take months, and that even after the wounds had closed, the scars, both physical and emotional, would remain. Sophia, who had retained the majority of the shared liver, seemed to recover slightly faster than Isabel. But Isabel's journey was far more complicated. Her body had to adjust to life with just 1 kidney, a process that left her fatigued and prone to nausea. Her diet became strictly monitored, and she required frequent dialysis treatments to support her weakened system until a long-term solution could be found. Each session was exhausting, and the sight of her daughter growing thinner, weaker, was nearly unbearable for Emma. "She needs a kidney transplant," Dr. Harper explained. "We knew this would be a possibility. But now it's becoming urgent." Without hesitation, Emma underwent testing. When the results came back, confirming that she was a match, she didn't even blink before making her decision. "Take mine." The gift of a mother. The preparations for Emma's kidney donation moved quickly. Even though she was still recovering from the trauma of seeing her daughters undergo such an intense surgery, her love for them left no room for hesitation. The night before the transplant, she sat in Isabel's hospital room, gently brushing the girl's hair as she lay curled up, too exhausted to move. "Mama, are you scared?" Isabel asked softly. Emma smiled, leaning down to press a kiss to her forehead. "Not at all. You know why?" Isabel shook her head. "Because I get to help you. That's all I've ever wanted." The next morning, as Emma was wheeled into surgery, Daniel kissed her hand and whispered, "You're the strongest person I know." Emma simply smiled. She wasn't doing this because she was strong. She was doing this because there was no other choice. The transplant was a success. Though Isabel's recovery was still difficult, her body slowly began to adjust to its new organ. For the first time since the separation surgery, her energy started to return. Her cheeks regained their color. Her laughter, something they had missed so much, started to come back. Watching her daughters heal, Emma knew she had made the right choice. The first steps to independence. Despite the successful transplant, the girls still faced enormous challenges. For one, neither of them had ever walked independently before. Their entire lives had been spent coordinating their movements with each other. Now, they had to learn how to balance, how to support themselves without the other. Physical therapy became a daily struggle. Sophia, always the more determined of the two, attacked the challenge head-on. When she first attempted to stand, she wobbled, nearly collapsing back onto the bed. But she gritted her teeth, gripping the handrails, and tried again. And again. "Come on, Isa. If I can do it, you can too," she urged. But Isabel was hesitant. The transplant had left her weaker, and she was still adjusting to her new reality. For weeks, she resisted, insisting that she was too tired, that it hurt too much. Until one day, after a particularly difficult therapy session, Sophia looked at her and said something that changed everything. "We can do this together, even if we're apart." That was all it took. From that day forward, Isabel fought through the pain, just as Sophia had. Slowly, day by day, they made progress. First, it was standing. Then, taking a few shaky steps with assistance. Then, learning to use crutches, followed by physical training with prosthetics. It was exhausting. It was frustrating. But it was worth it. Facing the outside world. After nearly 6 months in and out of the hospital, the girls were finally ready to return home. For Emma and Daniel, it was a moment of celebration, but also anxiety. The outside world could be cruel, and they worried about how their daughters would be treated now that they were visibly different from their peers. At first, the girls were excited to go back to school, but their return was met with a mix of reactions. Some kids were kind and curious, eager to hear about their journey. Others stared, whispered, or asked questions that made the girls uncomfortable. One afternoon, after overhearing a particularly cruel remark from a classmate, Isabel came home in tears. "Why do we have to be different?" She sobbed into Emma's chest. Emma hugged her tightly, stroking her back. "Because being different is what makes you both extraordinary." Sophia, always the fighter, took her sister's hand. Besides, she added with a smirk, "If they think we're different, wait until they see what we can really do." With every challenge, every moment of doubt, they continued to prove that their story wasn't one of tragedy, it was one of triumph. The road ahead was still long. There would be more surgeries, more physical therapy, more obstacles to overcome. But the Carter family had already learned the most important lesson. They had survived together, and now they would thrive together. Becoming whole, a future rewritten. The Carter twins had spent their entire lives defying expectations. From the moment they were born conjoined, doctors had doubted their survival. When they were separated, the world wondered if they could truly live independent lives. And yet, through every challenge, every surgery, every moment of pain, every whisper of doubt, they had done more than just survive. They had flourished. The road to strength. Years passed, and the struggles they once faced as fragile, recovering children slowly transformed into stories of triumph. Physical therapy, once a grueling daily battle, became a means of empowerment. Sophia, who had always been the more daring of the two, pushed herself relentlessly. When she first transitioned from crutches to walking independently, she had done so with sheer determination, refusing to let anything hold her back. Isabel, on the other hand, had taken more time. She had always been the one who hesitated, who analyzed every move before making it. But she was also the one who, when she finally made up her mind, committed with unwavering focus. The day she took her first independent steps without assistance, she turned to Sophia and said with a quiet, knowing smile, "Told you I'd catch up." Sophia had laughed, grabbing her sister's hand. "I was waiting for you." Together, they faced the world, just as they always had, finding their voices. High school presented an entirely new set of challenges. For the first time, they were beginning to discover who they were as individuals, rather than as the miracle twins the world had always known. Sophia was bold, outspoken, and fearless. She thrived in the arts, becoming a talented digital illustrator with a knack for capturing raw emotion in her work. She loved the way colors and textures could tell a story without words, and her pieces often reflected their journey, an abstract fusion of struggle and triumph. Isabel, meanwhile, found her passion in music. Despite the challenges of playing instruments with one hand, she mastered the guitar, teaching herself how to play with an adapted technique. Her voice, soft yet powerful, became her greatest instrument. When she sang, people listened, not just because of her story, but because of the undeniable beauty in her music. For the first time, they weren't just Sophia and Isabel, the conjoined twins who had been separated. They were Sophia, the artist, and Isabel, the musician, facing the world, together but apart. Their 18th birthday marked a turning point. With adulthood on the horizon, they knew it was time to step out of the protective cocoon their parents had built around them. For so long, Emma and Daniel had been their shields, their advocates. But now it was time to stand on their own. One evening, as the family sat together in the living room, Sophia and Isabel exchanged a glance before Isabel finally spoke. "We want to go to college." Emma and Daniel exchanged glances. They had always known this day would come, but hearing it aloud made it feel real. "That's amazing," Emma said, though her voice wavered slightly. "Have you thought about where you want to go?" Sophia hesitated. Then, for the first time in their lives, she said something that shocked everyone. "Different schools." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For 18 years, they had never spent more than a few days apart. They had never lived separate lives. But now, Sophia wanted to pursue an art program in one state, and Isabel had been accepted into a prestigious music conservatory in another. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, but she swallowed the lump in her throat. "Are you sure?" Isabel nodded. "We've been together our whole lives. We will always be together. But it's time to see who we are on our own." And in that moment, Emma realized this was what they had fought for. Not just survival, not just physical separation. True independence. A farewell, but not an ending. The day they moved into their separate dorms was surreal. For the first time, they weren't waking up to each other's presence. There was no instinctive reaching for the other in the morning, no synchronized routines. It was strange, it was terrifying, but it was also exhilarating. In their own ways, they flourished. They called each other daily, sharing every little moment. But they also learned to navigate life as individuals. They'd made new friends, built their own identities, and proved to themselves and the world that they were more than just a medical story. They were young women with dreams, ambitions, and limitless futures. An unbreakable bond. Years later, at Isabel's first major concert performance, Sophia sat in the front row, a proud smile on her face as her sister stepped onto the grand stage. The moment Isabel's voice filled the auditorium, Sophia closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. When the final note rang out, the audience erupted into applause. Isabel took a small breath, gripping the microphone. "There's someone I want to thank," she said. "My sister, Sophia. She's been with me since the moment we were born, and even though we live our own lives now, she's still my other half. So this is for her." From the side of the stage, Sophia felt tears slip down her cheeks. They had fought. They had struggled. They had survived. And now, they were truly living. Their story wasn't one of tragedy. It wasn't even one of survival. It was a story of love, of resilience, and of the unbreakable bond between two souls who had once been one, only to find that even apart, they would always be whole. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.